Alrighty, let's get started, everyone. Minutes from the February 14th meeting. Any changes or corrections needed? With that, someone make a motion to accept. Motion, Joe. Greg? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Budget report is attached. On the revenue side, up top, the main item was the payment from Lynn Stanley, their first payment for our 3-year option agreement. Some investment earnings and on the expenditure side, nothing much. Salaries under Trion Technology Park, that was our semi-annual insurance bill that was paid. We had $562 of work on our website, and we had a series of miscellaneous expenses as shown there. Renewing our Zoom account. We had to purchase some more checks and the payment on this conference room table. For the record, they did come back and resand the sides for everybody's request to their credit, and it came out and they put another coat of epoxy over the entire table.
Yeah. Oh, that would explain why I wasn't finding the defect anymore.
How about that?
All right.
Yep.
Much better.
We appreciated that, and let Dave know we appreciated them coming back and taking care of that. So, all right. And then on the previous page is your T-bill status. And where we stand with those, looking at, as you look down at the bottom, what the total purchase price of those were going to be, and what they're today, what the current market value for those T-bills are. So they're doing quite well for us, and we did invest the additional 500 that was authorized at the last meeting. Okay. Any questions? Someone make a motion to accept the budget report? Jay, one second to that. I did it. Sue, thank you, Sue. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Audit committee, Mike? We looked at the statement last week. Everything was in order. Very good. Moving on to county reports. Jeff is not here. Who was be here from the CRG. The CRG report is attached for your perusal at your leisure. Okay. And if Jeff does show up, we can slide him in at that time. Okay. I will see next week. From a county idea. Okay. Yeah. Bringing up the fact that we would like to be involved in that brownfield. Okay. Next year. Fair enough. Good. Under old business, Nexus, nothing to report. Win Stanley, nothing to report. Backup generator. It's been installed, as I emailed everybody. Found some issues with it. Still, we'll be waiting to hear back from Generac on what they're proposing to do to try to deal with that particular issue. So that's really all to report so far. Moving on to the Benjamin Moore project. At your last meeting, you reviewed a second request from Benjamin Moore to increase their total sales tax exemptions for their expansion project. They cited the primary reason for that is due to inflation, increasing the cost. Yes. Yes.
Does Joe need to leave or just can't vote upon it?
The policy is to leave. Yes. Okay. At your last meeting, you authorized scheduling a public hearing on this request. That was because the request resulted in an exemption that would exceed the $100,000 threshold for requiring a public hearing. That public hearing was held on Monday, February 27th, right here, and no one spoke at that public hearing. Attached to your agenda is a resolution to approve the increase in sales tax exemption for the Benjamin Moore project. It is the standard resolution that Kara has drafted for you. This is the same one that we have used in previous actions. So is there any questions? No. Joe Gillis makes a motion to approve the resolution. Greg Truckenmiller seconds that. Is there any further discussion or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The resolution is approved. Okay, moving on to new business, review of the IDA's draft audit. Thank you, Joe. Okay, in front of you is the draft audit. I emailed it to everyone last week with the draft agenda. Also attached is a summary from the Weston Company. Unfortunately, because of the rescheduling of the meeting, Mike had another commitment and couldn't be here today. But I'd like to run through what Mike's presentation would have been about. And first, the overall finding of their audit was an unmodified opinion, which is the highest opinion that we can get. It is the same opinion that we have historically gotten from the audit. The first part of the audit report is what is called the MDA, or the management's discussion and analysis. And this is in essence a summary of the IDA's activities for the past year that I prepare and send to Weston Company to include into the audit. And it just gives a reader an understanding of what the IDA did in the previous year. Moving on, the statement of net position on page 14 shows balance between our assets and liabilities and what our net position is. And page 15 is our statement of activities for the year. And it shows that this past year we had expenses that exceeded revenues to the extent of $27,787. But new this year is the unrealized and realized gains from the T-bill investments that we're having, and that is something new that is going to be reflected in the audit. And the balance is the notes that are included in the report that provides more details for various components. The one thing to note is, again, two things to note. Note number 2, which is on page 18, which is the cash that's restricted due to the city of Johnstown. That deals with the long-term agreement we've had with the city of Johnstown, whereby when we have sold land in the Johnstown Industrial Park, portion of that proceeds goes into a separate account that the IDA maintains for the city of Johnstown, but it's the city of Johnstown's money. And right now, as of the end of the year, that account totals $370,589. And Johnstown draws upon that if and when they want for a particular use or project that's somehow tied to economic development. And that goes back to an agreement that we executed with the city of Johnstown back in the late 80s when the Johnstown Park was built.
Do they make any interest on that, or?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yep. Yep.
Have they drawn upon it in the
Numerous
last
times.
years? Okay.
Numerous times. Okay. And they've done things such as they repaved the road in the Johnstown Industrial Park because it was, the wear and tear on it. They've done sidewalk work in the city of Johnstown. They've done a number of different types of projects over the years where they've drawn upon that. Okay.
And when they draw upon that, do they tell us?
Yeah, oh, yeah, they have to.
Okay.
They send the procedures, they simply send us a letter. It's their money.
Mhm.
And the letter says, please send us this amount of money. We write the check and it goes to them. Okay? And again, it's not our money. We
Mhm.
simply hold it for them. And again, that was the arrangement back in the late 80s that the city council and city attorney at that time asked to enter into.
Mhm.
It wasn't wasn't ours. This is what they requested, and we've honored that since that time. And the other note is the note 4 on page 19, which is the long-term debt as it's defined, and that is the commitment that we have for the Crossroads Business Park, whereby we entered into an agreement way back when with those entities who contributed dollars towards the local share of a grant that was secured to build the Crossroads Business Park. And so the commitment was made back then to repay these folks the amounts that they contributed. And we continue to hold that note here because we still owe them because we've only sold 2 lots. And we did repay them a few dollars, but this is the balance that is still owed to them. So
It's not like we're paying monthly payments or anything like that. We only wait till we sell a lot,
That is
then we make the payment.
that is correct. Okay. That is basically it. Again, it's another unqualified opinion, or unmodified opinion, which is the best that we can receive. So any questions on the draft audit?
What year is Mike in out of the 5 years? Is
I
that?
think this is either 4 or 5.
He just said he was done after.
I think it's after this one, yeah. So again, state law says that we can retain the same firm to perform our audit, but the lead auditor must change every 5 years. So if this was indeed Mike's last year, someone else within the Weston Company will become the lead auditor in 2023, assuming at your annual meeting, you look to retain Weston Company to perform the audit. Okay?
Yes, Karen. Hi, Karen.
She's still muted.
Morning, everyone. Hello.
Morning.
Gotcha.
Oh, there, Jeff is here.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff.
Morning, Jeff.
Nope, he's still. There we go.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff, can you hear us?
We can hear you fine.
And still waiting for Todd?
Still waiting for Todd.
Okay,
They're on their way. I know
okay.
Todd and Kara were both joining. Oh, Kara's in.
Okay, if there are any further questions, would someone be willing to make the motion that's on the agenda, Greg?
I'll second it.
Mike? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Very good. Can we go back now to the beginning? Jeff, you want to go through the CRG's report, please?
Sure. On the business and marketing report, first, we recently participated in another Zoom meeting that provided updates on the state's NANO program and advanced manufacturing efforts through New York State. CRG is currently working on another agricultural loan through the 6-County Job Development Authority Agriculture Loan Program. Ron met with the county planning, and the IDA on the Fulton County site development process. CRG's Fulton County EPA Brownfield program will be conducting a public outreach meeting in the next 30 days. That date is still to be determined. Both the 2022 Microenterprise and 2021 Microenterprise CARES Act grant programs continue to be successful. We're looking at possibly receiving more microenterprise grant money from New York State. The second annual 6-County Brownfield Developer Summit is taking place on April 25th and 26th. Registration is open on the MVEDD website, and a program brochure will be available soon. CRG's first approved City of Johnstown loan is scheduled to close in 2 weeks. The Gloversville Downtown Revitalization Initiative Administration is underway. We have been meeting with project awardees, making sure they get their updated budgets and costs together, and CRG is initiating contact with New York State agencies on their behalf. We are working with the City of Gloversville on the Brownfield Opportunity Area, specifically in the Crescent area of the city, to help transform sites into community investment properties. And finally, in this report, Win Stanley submitted Tryon in response to a site RFP received by the CRG.
All right, thanks, Mike, Jeff. Sorry, any questions of Jeff?
Jim, I have 2 questions from Ron. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask for those or whether in new business.
No, fire away.
Okay, first he asks what the current selling price per acre for raw land is in the Tryon Technology Park.
$27,500.
$27,500. Thank you, sir. And secondly, he's asked for an update on the Crossroads Business Park and what the IDA's future zoning plans are for the site.
Well, the update is the zoning has nothing to do with the IDA. That's the city of Gloversville zones the property, not the IDA. So in terms of that, the Gloversville is pursuing having discussions about that, as you know. And so it'll be up to the city council to make a decision on how they want to rezone it, if they want to rezone it, and when that's going to happen.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay. Any other questions for Jeff? Let me get the name right this time. All right, thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, going back to page 4 of your agenda. Under the IDA's 2022 annual report, I mailed that out or emailed that out to everybody last week. It is this tiny little document here that addresses the 18 specific items that the state of New York mandates to be included into our annual report. The only thing that was missing from it is the final audit. So once that's now been accepted by this board, I will notify Mike. He will send me the final audit. I insert that in here and then I can file this with the state. Any questions on what the annual report contains, or any questions on the annual report? Here's none. Would someone be willing to make the motion that's on the agenda on page 4?
I'll make the motion.
Dave?
Second.
Joe, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Under other business, there's an additional item to add dealing with the Huffman's Car Wash project. Kara, could you give a brief explanation of what it is that's on the agenda here in your resolution?
Sure. So we closed on that project in December of 2021. And there were two lots included in that project. And then they subsequently, after the closing, subdivided off the property that I believe contains like a former restaurant.
Yes.
So they subdivided it after the fact. And so it created several lots, some of which should not be under the terms of the pilot, but because at the time of the closing, it wasn't subdivided, it was all included. So the amendments are only to amend the property description to include just the car wash portion of that property under the terms of the pilot. So the amendment, there's several documents that need to be amended because where the property description is, it's in the lease, the underlying lease, and then the memos that are recorded in the county clerk's office, and as well as the pilot. So that's what that resolution authorizes, the execution of the amendments so that just the car wash property is included on the pilot. Those other parcels that they subdivided off will be returned to the tax roll.
Okay. Any questions on the action that's in front of you. The resolution that you have is in front of you. It's titled Resolution Approving Certain Amendments to the Lease Agreement and Pilot Agreement related to the HDC2 Realty Gloversville LLC, also known as the Huffman Car Wash Project. Would someone be willing to make a motion to introduce that resolution?
I'll make the motion, Jim.
Well,
Mike?
second.
Dave? Any further discussion?
Does that have any plans for the diner?
No, at the moment,
No.
no.
Yeah, my understanding is they were looking for somebody
Yes,
to buy it ever.
yes,
To get it.
they're searching, so. Any further questions? All in favor of adopting the resolution as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried.
Okay. We need to see there.
Yes, sir. Yes, it is.
Who's here?
Kara? On the first line of the whereas in that resolution,
Yeah,
after the Gloversville LL, it should be LLC,
okay,
okay?
I'll update that.
Thank you, and I'll get this to you. Okay, under board training, the Public Works Enhancement Fund. The New York Department of Labor has a Public Work Enhancement Fund that was established years ago. This law requires that each state agency or public benefit corporation, which is what we are, that enters into a public work contract, pay 0.1% of the total cost of the contract to this fund. We received recently a notice from the Department of Labor asking us to sign a form saying that we acknowledge and understand this particular law. And so action item number 1 is we need to authorize our chairman to sign this notice. Secondly, last year we entered into a public works contract with Cobalt Contracting for the generator at Tryon. We, per this requirement, we need to issue a payment to the Department of Labor in the amount that's shown there, which said it was a $74,000 contract. So it's whatever those percentages are. I don't have that. I didn't calculate that out exactly. So the second part of that motion would be to authorize a payment to the Department of Labor per this Public Works Enhancement Fund. Everybody understand what the two actions that we need here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Would someone be willing to make that motion? Greg? Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Dave? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Second item for board training is, since we had a discussion in the last couple of months about housing here in the county. I thought it would just be good to go back and look at what the county's housing study had in terms of key findings, and just kind of go through those, so you just as a reminder of what the that study included. And those key findings are listed on the bottom of pages 5 and 6. 1, there is a shortage of new single-family, professional, and executive level housing in the county. Jeff can attest to that. It's a challenge that he's facing in his job at the hospital, and so that's certainly was a key finding. 2, there is a current and future need for a variety of housing options for empty nesters to accommodate their increased mobility, reduce maintenance demands, and encourage the turnover of housing that would appeal to younger families. 3, there is a shortage of mixed-use neighborhoods outside of the cities. These types of neighborhoods appeal to the nation's largest demographic segments, baby boomers and millennials. There is a strong current and future demand for new senior housing to meet changing lifestyles and accessibility needs in the form of apartments and patio homes, which are smaller, easier to maintain, and provide a good bridge to retirement for many households. There are a number of formerly productive but currently vacant institutional and manufacturing properties. Some can be adaptively reused, but others will need to be demolished, at least in part, and redeveloped. And lastly, the cities need rich amenities to attract people to live downtown. Mixed-use places with gathering spaces, public art, open space, recreational trails, attractive landscapes, Wi-Fi access, and adequate and safe parking are needed to meet the contemporary expectations of residents and visitors. Housing is going to occur first in those communities that have these amenities. I also attached to your agenda the more detailed recommendations that were included in the housing study. I'm not going to go through all of these, but there's a half a dozen pages of fairly detailed recommendations that were included in the housing study. And these are all part of what was recommended as the implementation plan for all locally how to proceed with trying to implement some of these things. So when you hear what some of these key findings are, everyone agree that those are correct, or have they changed at all? Dave?
I have a question about the findings. You know, they find these conclusions. What is that based on? What research was done to draw these conclusions and state these as findings?
A lot of statistical work, researching.
Drawn
data,
from where?
Drawn from various data sources.
Uh-huh.
Okay, looking at population trends, looking at age characteristics, looking at income levels, looking at trends in age.
Specifically to Fulton County.
Specifically to Fulton County and subregions within the county.
Uh-huh.
They broke the county down into a number of sub areas and looked at the data regarding those sub areas also. And so there are specific recommendations for different areas. With like Kroger Lake, Northville, they did break that all down.
So these are recommendations that they're making for Fulton County to develop a strategy to develop more housing within the county. Right. I mean, the idea would be we as a community would convert these recommendations, these findings into some sort of actionable plan.
Correct.
To address these, what I would consider identified deficiencies in the marketplace.
Correct. But they didn't go into this with a predetermined notion that there was a need for more housing.
Well, understood.
The first step was looking at all the data.
Yeah.
And based upon that, determined
Right.
that there was a need.
Right.
Okay.
So since 2018, out of these findings, what has our county accomplished?
Not much.
Nothing.
Not much.
That was my sense, but I just didn't know if that was
Being fair and honest.
okay.
Not much.
What's the reason for that? Is it the study got put on the shelf and everybody forgot about it, or?
Part of it. Part of the reason. Probably the primary reason.
Uh-huh.
On page 15, it talks about number 4, saying that we should conduct a housing summit. It talks about doing it yearly. I mean, there's a type on 2026 summit. But I think that's one of our goals too, that we had set, that we should try to get the county back to seeing how we can.
And I recognize that, this came out in 2018, you said?
Correct.
And, pandemic set in a year later. So, a little trifling if it maybe interrupted the process. I think maybe, we review the goals that we're trying to establish for ourselves. Maybe it's time for us to kind of step forward and start to get everybody back around the table about this. Because it's obviously impacting our institutions, the hospital. I think our schools are probably impacted by it and trying to recruit new teachers. And I know for a fact from my own experience that we have issues with affordable housing. And I think this is going to require more than just our municipal officials at the table and our economic development officials. I think lending institutions need to be brought to the table to talk about funding mechanisms and how to solve this problem, because it's not getting any cheaper to build housing right now. And my concern is that we may already be priced out of our ability to catch up.
Mhm.
And we may be in a perpetual spiral of not having enough housing.
So how do we get folks rethinking about this?
We have to.
I like Joe's idea, the
It
summit.
says right here that we're supposed to be meeting together, and it says who we should invite to the summit, so.
Let's start there.
Is that something that the IDA facilitates, or the IDA recommends to the county or the cities, or someone to facilitate?
It's kind of out of our wheelhouse, isn't it?
What's that?
It's out of our wheelhouse, isn't it?
I think the county did the study, they should, just get a letter from the IDA saying, at our board meeting.
Well, we can support housing projects.
No, I know that. Well,
Right,
I'm
but
just saying
I'm just talking specifically to the summit. Where should that, who do you think that should
Well,
facilitate getting it done?
my concern is if we don't at least call the summit to order, then we're going to try to pass the buck, and unless it's a priority for somebody else, which I don't think it is. I don't think anybody's going to take action on it. I think we have to call the summit, and in the same way that, the CRG has been trying to lead the effort on, getting some sites selected and getting people around the table, that's, I think, something we can at least do. And then from there, we can determine whose responsibility it should be to do anything. But right now, nobody else is stepping into that void. I don't see why we couldn't, at least ignite the conversation a bit more.
And we're not the only county going through this. I was at a breakfast last month for Clinton County, and the mayor of Plattsburgh spoke, the town of Plattsburgh head spoke, and then the county head spoke, and all three of them said, we need housing. Now, subsequently met with the town of Plattsburgh this week. They've had more development in the city because his phrase was, we plan the work and then we work the plan. And they've got a comprehensive plan that includes zoning, but his big thing was we're building out infrastructure so there are areas that were previously undeveloped land have the infrastructure to at least attract developers, and then we're marketing those areas to the developers. So with us, I know that the county got the projects to extend the water line north on 30. I think there should, again, plan the work and work the plan. There should be a plan around that of what areas are going to have those services available to them. Those would be likely developable. But I also know that both cities want to plan too, because that's tax revenue for them, for people who live and work in the city. So.
And all of those communities have different needs in terms of what their housing stock could or should be. Cities have a rather developed housing stock, but it's aging out. So, revitalization and replacement needs to be on the table for the cities. But I agree that without a plan, we're kind of stuck in mud and we'll never get to addressing any of this. I think a summit's a good place to start. It comes right from the plan, a recommendation from the plan. And so I don't think we're asking for anything that's outside of what's already been established. Ideally, I think the county should be handling this, but I don't think the supervisors have this on their radar. And frankly, I don't feel like waiting anymore. The longer we wait, the longer we have no solution.
Next week is our monthly meeting with Ron, Scott, John, Stan, and myself. What I'd like to suggest is that Scott and I bring this up at this meeting and see if the three entities, the IDA, CRG, and county could team together and try to move forward with trying to get this type of summit going. And just saying, listen, it's either join it together or the IDA wants to do this. Either, we'd like to do it together.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly the way to go. But at some point, all of the municipalities impacted by this, I think, need to be brought into the conversation through this.
Absolutely.
And as a working group to kind of get it off the ground, certainly let's use that group for.
Okay. If
for a
that's
good
okay,
purpose.
Scott?
Yeah, no, that works for me, and that's fine, working on various comprehensive plans throughout the county, we have been using the housing study as a basis for, working on housing with them, and I think in that ground level, as long as the zoning is going to allow the mixed use and understands that there's senior housing, so we've been trying to add that more in comprehensive plan, but, I know when we first completed the development strategy, housing was a big topic. But I can tell you right now that my department does not have the wherewithal to undertake an initiative like that itself. We don't have the expertise for it. I mean, so one of the ideas was to actually have a housing consultant, so to speak, basically work with the county to continue on, because it's a unique niche, right? I mean, housing's pretty unique, and then we have everything coming down the pike with all this electric by 2025. Any new residents got to be fully electrified. I mean, so just saying, but a combined effort between all the groups, I think is definitely the way to go. I don't have the capacity to.
Relative to getting this summit going.
Yeah,
I think that's the start. I think that's going to elevate this as an issue, and figure out from there where to go.
Do we have the ability to invite developers? Isn't that kind of like?
I think it's not so much the ability. I think it's almost a must.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have to do that.
Yeah.
Or at least get the word out to developers, in some way, and that's gonna be part of the discussion that we'll have as we try to put this summit together.
We can certainly bring developers in as a point source of information about what they look for, what are the key indicators for them to identify a site.
If there is such a need, why don't we have the market?
Because it's not economically feasible in Fulton County. The cost to build new, they can't get the rents in Fulton County to cover with their.
So that's why I say getting lending institutions and other factors involved with ways to reduce or offset the construction costs, the fit up costs, the occupancy costs, so that the rents that they can charge are, capable of paying them back and leaving money in their pocket.
So developers, and I'll use Saratoga County as an example because that's been a growing county. For 2-bedroom apartment, they're getting $17.50 a month. You couldn't get $17.50 a month in Fulton. They're getting more, so they're gonna get more than some of that. Right.
Having been through it with my daughter,
Right.
there's 1-bedroom units are getting $2,400 for.
Right. Depending where they are.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's right.
But I was talking like blue collar work. Those and their plans have changed this year because the models they used last year had an interest rate that was maybe in the 4s or 5s, and now they're looking at interest rates in the 7s. And that's changed their model, and a lot of those projects are on pause this year. So they figure out what the financing structure, and a lot of times it's requiring more equity into the project that make the debt service coverage lower. So that's one of the challenges. But with that said, the state's got a ton of money and the feds available for affordable housing, senior housing. But what you need there is you need a sponsor, which is, it could be Gloversville Housing Authority, could be the sponsor. And then there's tax credits available. They sell to the secondary market. Lender has to come in and provide the construction financing, but they are well monitored, well viewed. There's a lot of oversight, so the costs are usually pretty accurate. And then there's an identified source of money that comes in at the tail end to reduce the amount to make it attractive for the developers.
That was the model for Fulton Friendship House.
Right. Before you bring the developers in, I think you have to make that plan, and then the developers can come in and say, okay, we can see the project because there's a plan in place. I think if you bring the developers in now, it's premature.
There's not enough built out in the way of a plan or infrastructure to entice anybody to come in.
Right.
They're just going to look in, oh, okay, they're just looking for free advice on how to get it done. All they're going to tell us is find us money and get some infrastructure installed. Identify your sites, make sure the zoning is clear for that stuff.
Yeah, like the Malone just had a large project. Citizens Advocates of the not-for-profit was the sponsor, and they partnered with a developer, but they had a site purchase. They had the plans, the permits in place so the developer could see the project when it was time to get involved.
it may end up being a conclusion of this summit that there should be some entity to act in that sponsorship role. There already are entities that could. I don't know if they're all set up to take on the full burden of this, but I think there needs to be an organized effort in the same way that we made organized efforts to develop industrial sites in the 80s. I think we need to be looking at organized efforts to create housing options. Because right now we're swirling. We are swirling. And
Well, there's really two entities right now. Pet Off Gardens as an organization, and Loversville Housing. I mean, they're territorial to the extent that there's Loversville and the town of Mayfield. The town of Johnstown, there's no such organization. In the city of Johnstown, there's no such organization. So that structure issue needs to be addressed somehow. Maybe there's some type of a countywide organization that can be that sponsoring entity countywide. But that may be one of the things that will have to come up during the summer. So let us talk next week and I'll report back at our next meeting. Okay. That's all I have for open session. And does anyone else have any other business to present? Having said that, I'd like to ask for a motion to go into executive session for the purposes as identified on the agenda. I'll make that motion. Mike? Your second to that?
Second.
Joe? Thank you, Joe. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We're in an executive session as of 8:47 a.m.
Bye, guys.
Gentlemen,
Thank you, everybody.
all righty.
thank you.
Now back in open session.
I shall recuse myself.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, we've received proposals to perform desktop environmental assessments on a couple of tracts of land. The approved proposals were from Environmental Design Partnership at $24,000, CT Mail at $74,800. Recommending that the motion be passed to authorize the chairman to execute a contract with the Environmental Design Partnership in the amount of $24,000. Correct?
Just second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Dave? Not that you want to return, but.
I left his coat.
And his phone.
Okay,
So just clarification on that too, because I asked Jim, I was worried about being away in Florida. I guess you have to have a quorum here, but you have enough voting to.
well, if you have a quorum, you have enough to vote, okay?
But if one person,
One person, correct.
no,
Correct.
but Todd can.
For our policy, for us to have a quorum, there needs to be 4 members physically present at the meeting. Once you have a quorum, anyone participating by Zoom can vote on a matter. But the members who are participating by Zoom do not count towards the actual designating a quorum for the meeting. Okay?
I was worried that our Zoom votes weren't going to matter.
Nope. So a motion to close. Someone make this?
Stu was always there.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, next meeting is April 18th.
See you guys.
at 8 a.m.